Hi Pine class, welcome back to story time. We're going to start with part 6 of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Just as a reminder from last week, Aslan was going to the stone table to meet the witch and they were going to bind him, so that means to tie him up. So let's see what happens to Aslan. Shouting and jeering, they tied the lion with tight cords. It took all their efforts to lift him onto the table. Susan and Lucy waited for Aslan to roar and spring at his enemies, but he didn't, and they realised with horror that he was sacrificing himself for Edmund. The witch raised her stone knife with a cruel laugh. As she struck, the girls couldn't bear to look and covered their eyes. For a few moments the girls were in danger, as with wild cries the vile creatures came sweeping off the hilltop and disappeared into the forest. Lucy and Susan crept out onto the open hilltop. They knelt sobbing in the wet grass and kissed the dead Aslan's cold face. All night long they kept watch over him. Then, as they watched the sunrise, they heard a great cracking, deafening noise behind them. The stone table was broken in two, and Aslan had gone. "Oh, is it more magic?" cried Susan. "Yes," said a great voice behind their backs. There, larger than ever, stood Aslan himself. "Aren't you dead then, dear Aslan?" asked Lucy. He stooped his golden head and licked her forehead, and both girls flung themselves upon him. "You see," he told them, "there is a magic even older than the deep magic. It says that if an innocent victim was killed instead of a traitor, the table would crack and death start working backwards. Oh, children, I feel my strength coming back to me." And he roared. Then Aslan told Lucy and Susan to climb onto his back, for they had a long way to go. They spread through orchards of snow-white cherry trees, past roaring waterfalls and down into wild valleys. It was nearly midday when they found themselves at the witch's castle. Aslan made a flying leap right over the castle wall, and Susan and Lucy tumbled gently off his back into the middle of a courtyard full of statues. Then Aslan bounded up to a stone lion and breathed on him. A streak of gold ran along his marble back, and as the colour spread, the lion shook his mane and the heavy stone folds rippled into living hair. Everywhere he went, Aslan brought the statues to life, and the whole place rang with shouts and laughter. Best of all was when Lucy found Mr. Tumnus. Then the giant Rumblebuffin knocked down part of the castle wall, and everyone set off for the battle to help Peter and the others. When they arrived, there were statues dotted all over the battlefield. The witch had clearly been using her wand. With a roar that shook all of Narnia, Aslan flung himself upon her. Most of the enemy was killed in the first charge, and when the rest saw that the witch was dead, they either gave up or fled. Peter looked pale and much older. He told the girls how Edmund had fought his way through 3 ogres to the witch and smashed his sword down on her wand. But he had been badly hurt. Remembering her precious cordial, Lucy poured a few drops into her brother's mouth. In moments he was healed, and there on the battlefield Aslan made him a knight. The next day they all marched eastwards to Cair Paravel. In the great hall, all hung with peacock's feathers, Aslan solemnly crowned the children and led them to 4 thrones amid shouts of "Long live King Peter! Long live Queen Susan! Long live King Edmund! And long live Queen Lucy!" That night there was a great feast, but in the middle of it all, Aslan quietly slipped away. And when the kings and queens noticed that he wasn't there, they said nothing about it, for as Mr. Beaver had warned them, he'll be coming and going. He's wild, you know, not like a tame lion. And so the years passed. Peter, Susan, Edmund and Lucy reigned over Narnia, and they were loved by all. Then one day, Mr. Tumnus brought them the news that the white stag, who could grant wishes, had been seen in the western woods. So the 2 kings and the 2 queens set out on a hunting party. As soon as they entered the thick wood, Queen Susan said, "How strange! I see a tree of iron." And as they walked towards it, they all suddenly remembered that it was a lamppost. Soon, to their surprise, they were making their way not through branches, but through coats. Next moment, they all came tumbling out of a wardrobe into an empty room, and they were no longer kings and queens, but just Peter, Susan, Edmund and Lucy in their old clothes. It was the very same hour of the very same day on which they had all gone into the wardrobe to hide. And when they went to explain to the professor why 4 of the coats out of his wardrobe were missing, he didn't tell them not to be silly, but believed the whole story. "You won't get into Narnia again through the wardrobe," he said, "but someday you'll get back. Once a king or queen in Narnia, always a king or queen in Narnia." And that is the very end of the adventure of the wardrobe. But if the professor was right, it was only the beginning of the adventures of Narnia. That's it. That's the end of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. We will have to start a brand new story tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed it.